Welcome back to Pour Temecula, a local wine, beer, and beverage podcast with your hosts, DeLucio and Shannon Cole. In this episode, Shannon and I take a deep dive into the Italian white wine varietals grown in and around Temecula. Italian varietals have been found to do exceptionally well in our climate, fully ripening to develop flavor while also maintaining needed fresh acidity. Over the last decade, many of these single varietal Temecula Valley wines have won awards, like the 2024 Wiens Vermentino, a gold medal winner at the Los Angeles International Wine Competition, or they've received high-scoring critical reviews like Robert Renzoni's 2023 Julia's Vineyard Pinot Grigio, which got 92 points from The Wine Enthusiast.
Literally hundreds of indigenous white grape varietals can be found in Italy. Cougar Vineyard and Winery has been a pioneer in bringing rare Italian grape varietals into the U.S. market, planting and producing wines from grapes like Falanghina, Vermentino, and Arneis. They were the first winery in the country to secure TTB approval to label Falanghina as a varietal wine in 2014, helping legitimize it in the American market. Through estate-grown plantings and comparative Temecula meets Italy blind tastings, Cougar has showcased how these traditionally Italian whites can thrive in Temecula's climate, earning recognition while introducing U.S. wine drinkers to distinctive, lesser-known varietals beyond the standard Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc.
Today, Shannon and I are at Cougar Vineyards to give you a rundown on many of these varietals, the grapes, what you can expect from the wine, and who's producing these wines here and around Temecula Valley. We'll also be tasting a few of the many Italian offerings that Cougar has, giving you our feedback along the way. Truth be told, we're not even sure our research found everything being grown locally, and internet sleuthing can only take us as far if you don't list it on your website. So maybe you should update your website.
Hint, hint.
Hint, hint. We were maybe misled today. Maybe. We won't single out any particular winery. So if we miss something like a grape or a producer, feel free to add to the conversation on social media posts. Just DM us or, scream at us in some place where you see us. Shannon gave out her phone number once. You can text her and yell at her. No, you can't. She did not give out her phone number either. Also, we really aren't going to address the pricing because it's so varied. And, sometimes I've been out and seen a $40 Pinot Grigio on a few menus in Temecula, and it feels a little ridiculous in my opinion. But before we get to all that, Shannon, what have you been drinking lately?
So I have been doing a lot of Italian wine tasting, which I guess is very fitting for this. Kind of prepping.
What a coincidence.
I know. I'm prepping for an event that I get to host at Two Travelers Wine Bar next month. So I've been tasting a lot of Italian wines, trying to pick out the perfect wines for that event. And then also I have a story about a cat wine. So this was back when my sister-in-law Sarah and her husband Christian were here. Actually, right after we recorded the Danish wine episode, I had this bottle of wine I bought from World Market that was in the shape of a cat. It was like
great marketing.
$5.99.
It probably $5.99. It probably costs more to make that bottle and ship it than it did for the wine inside.
Yeah. It was a Pinot Noir from Germany. I was so skeptical because hello, $5.99 and it's in a bottle shaped like a cat. However, I will say both Sarah and I thought it was delicious and I would absolutely go buy it again. In fact, I do want to go buy it again because part of me is like, was it just because I had already been drinking Danish wine before that? Is it really that good? So stay tuned. I will go buy another bottle and report back.
And where was that at?
It was at World Market.
Oh, the Cost Plus World Market? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, should you ever do a Pinot Noir themed blind tasting, you're going to have to for sure put the cat wine in there. So we have to see. You have to do that and then bring back the results.
I will.
The cat wine was the winner. I'm not sure what I could ever make of that, but yeah.
I'm going to make you blind taste it one day. All right. What have you been drinking?
All right. So a couple episodes ago, I didn't have some kind words to say about a particular Oak Mountain rosé wine of Grenache, but and I do try to tell it like it is. I'm not one to really hold back, especially when I am displeased with something. But to give them their props, I made carne asada tacos the other night. Had a lot of spice on it, cilantro, but the Oak Mountain Mourvedre, I hope I say it. Is it Mourvedre or Mourved?
I think it's technically pronounced Mourved.
Mourved. And if you're Spanish, it's Monastrell. So I'll go with the Monastrell because it's easier for me to say. But it was a perfect match. There was just tons of fruit. It was a really fruit-forward wine, and that just played really well with the spicy character, the carne asada. It was very delicious. So props to Oak Mountain on making that wine and finding a great pairing. The other thing I had recently, I was just showing Shannon the bottle of this before we got him on here, this is probably my favorite rosé. It's from Bernejo. It's a Listón Negro Rosado from Lanzarote in the Canary Islands. What makes this really special is that in the wine world, there's this term called heroic winemaking. It's for people who make wines from lost grapes, from places that are really remote or hard to find, or from really old vines. In this case, this is an island in the Canary Islands, Lanzarote, that is all volcanic black sand and stone. And what they do is, centuries ago, they took the mission grape, which is also called Listón Negro, and they bury these into pits that are in the lava stone, down like 8 meters, and they allow it to grow straight up for a couple years. And then they start to fill in those holes with the rocks. So you have the roots of the vine are on this bedrock underneath all these lava stones. And at the top of them are these big pits. So you see these vineyards out there, and it looks almost like a moonscape or like Mars with little pits, little golf-type divots in the sand. And then these vines are hundreds of years old. Just makes this, you have this volcanic ash and sand in these conditions, which things should not grow in. And to be able to produce a rosé that's very pale, but it has these intense red berry notes and citrus notes and zest, and there's this saline minerality that is amazing on it. It is truly a treat to have something like this that you can buy for around $30. I would suggest anybody ever see it. And it has this strange bottle. Maybe we'll take a picture of it and we'll throw it on social media. It kind of looks like some version of a cat bottle, but like a vase with a spout at the end. And it's the only wine bottle I've seen with like a spout, a point, like a vase point or something at the very top. But it's awesome. And where do you get it? I got that from Vino Carta in San Diego. People must think I shop at Vino Carta all the time. I do not. I just stop there when I am coming to or from the airport and I'm looking for something. I know I bring that up because we talked about Chenin Blanc and Chenin Blanc vineyards and the history of Chenin Blanc here in Temecula on the beginning of the last episode with Ryan and Katie Schumacher. We asked a question. We were like, are there any vines left? And Joe Wiens, thanks Joe from Lost Ranch Winery and from Wiens Winery as well, got back to me and said that there is indeed an old vine block that's located off of Rancho, California between Maurice Carré and then the Truffle Pig. So it's right there. And that got me thinking there must be these random blocks. We talked to Reagan Schneider and their family has some old Sauvignon Blanc blocks. How cool would it be if we could do like a legacy, like if the Growers Association could designate certain vineyards as legacy vineyards and certain wines as legacy wines? And there's a lot of steps that would go into that. But if you produced a wine that was 100% from that block, and it's been deemed as a legacy block, that you could have some sort of designation on the bottling and in your promotion of the wine to sort of tie back Temecula history to the beginning.
I love that idea. I don't know who actually owns that Chenin Blanc, if it belongs to Truffle Pig, but if you're out there and you're listening to this, make a Chenin Blanc, please.
And there is in Chile, there is these old vine Carignans. And if you are an old vine producer and you're approved, and they taste test the bottles too, but you can designate your bottle as a Vigno, Vigno. These are 100-plus-year-old vines, makes some amazing wine. And with the bottlings, they all just say Vigno on it in really big text, Vigno. And then maybe you see somewhere else on there that lists the producer and the vintage and all that information, but they're marketing these wines as old vine Carignan designated with that Vigno.
It's like drinking history.
We talked about it leaning into the history of art in Temecula Valley. And I know there's got to be more of these blocks out there, so it would be an interesting thing, I think. Anyway, so after that long speech, we're going to take a quick break here. We're going to pour some wine before we take a deep dive into the local Italian wine grape varieties. Cheers.
Cheers.
And we are back, and we are going to talk about 3 of the more common and probably familiar to you varietals that you might think are Italian, but actually are not Italian in origin whatsoever, which, them not being indigenous grapes is maybe why you've heard of them. The first one is Pinot Grigio, which is also called Pinot Gris. The second one is Moscato, which is actually Muscat or Muscat Canelli. There's also another Muscat we'll get to it in a bit, but there's another Muscat name. And then there's Vermentino, which is also known as Rolle, Rolle, in France. Do you want to kick off Pinot Grigio? I think this is something a lot of people have probably had in their life. Nevertheless, we will review it because it is probably the Italian wine you can find the most at any winery in Temecula.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, almost everywhere has a Pinot Grigio. So also known as Pinot Gris, as Rick said. In Italy, it's really prominent in the northern parts. Veneto, which is kind of just north of Venice and around there. Friuli, Venezia Giulia, which is on the border of Slovenia and like eastern Italy. And then Trentino Alto Adige, which is up in the Italian Alps.
Yeah, it's in the Italian France Alps.
To make sure I had that mountain range right.
A much different style of Pinot Grigio than what people are going to commonly think of Pinot Grigio.
So part of the characteristics of Pinot Grigio, it's usually light-bodied, very crisp with lemon, green apple, and almond flavors. The Italian Pinot Grigio tends to lean more neutral and refreshing, whereas in Alsace, in France, Pinot Gris is a little bit richer and spicier. I would pair Pinot Grigio with seafood or light pasta dishes, anything fresh, grilled chicken. And then for winemaking style, it's usually made in stainless steel tanks to kind of reserve the freshness and the aromatics of the grape. And then sometimes it'll be aged on the lees for a little more texture.
Yeah, also, a lot of times with Pinot Grigio, I get like beer yeast.
Oh.
That's kind of like my marker for like Italian Pinot Grigio.
Okay.
A cheap Italian Pinot Grigio.
I could see that. I'm going to keep that in my head now when I'm studying. Also, fun fact about Pinot Grigio, it's a mutation of Pinot Noir, which is a black grape. And the berries are kind of grayish pink in color, hence the name Gris or Grigio. When you're tasting it, I think for me, when I blind taste it, I do look for color. It's not always a pink or orange hue, but if it is, that's likely what you're tasting.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning that the skins of Pinot Grigio will be varied. It'll be some green, some light red, some darker red, and like purplish tones. And what can you do on those skins?
Skin contact wine. You can make some orange wine.
Yes, you can make some.
It's a very popular varietal to make orange wine from.
Yes. Well, it's an easy one to make from. Yeah. So you get some color from it within 7 to 10 days. So, yeah, maybe even less. The ones that I've had from Temecula, and if you're out there wondering who's got this, we were talking earlier about half the wineries.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more than half or a little less than half have a Pinot Grigio, but it's one of those grapes and one of those wines that you can go to just about every other winery and find. And for me, style-wise, they're definitely not lean here. They're more of a richer texture to them. But you get all the like lemon and like peach and a little bit of tropical.
The tropical notes around here.
So, yeah, that's probably one you've heard of. Which takes us to Moscato. So Muscat is also another name for Muscat Canelli. This is mostly found in northern Italy in the Piedmont area. You might have heard of Moscato di Asti. That would be made from, it's a little bubbly frizzante wine that is made from the Muscat grape and is quite sweet. But you can also find that in Alsace in France. That's another area that makes it a little bit richer and spicier style. Character-wise, very, very aromatic, very like orange blossom and apple blossom, lots of like peach, apricot, and honey, especially. It is generally low alcohol, so under 11%, and a Moscato di Asti is going to be like 5% alcohol, and like I said, frizzante. And a lot of places make Moscato in a sweet style. So if you're looking for a sweet wine when you go into Temecula, look for a Muscat. There are quite a few, not as many as Pinot Grigio, but you will find it here in town. So from a food perspective, you could do, because it is sweet, you can do some fruit tarts with it, some biscotti. I think it's a great thing with spicy Asian food, like Thai food. Boom, that's usually what I would gravitate towards. And you can just simply enjoy a couple bottles of Moscato di Asti by the pool.
So going into Vermentino, which is what Rick and I have in our glass right now, it's grown in a lot of coastal regions like Sardinia, Liguria, and Tuscany.
But you can find it in southern France. But it is, like I said, it is called Rolle, Rolle, and it's kind of gone out of favor there. I think a lot of it has to do with the success that Italy's had with it.
Makes sense. So typically with Vermentino, you'll get crisp, herbal, saline notes with some citrus, usually green apple, and sometimes almond or pine. It's really good with shellfish, oysters would be good, grilled fish, pesto, and any of those like Mediterranean vegetables and herbs. It's usually made in stainless steel to preserve the freshness. Sometimes you can find barrel fermented or lees aged versions that will add a little bit of complexity to it. Our fun fact for Vermentino, it thrives near the sea and often tastes distinctly Mediterranean with a salty, breezy character.
Temecula has really adopted Vermentino as the Italian wine grape that they think does really well. And we did feature that on our podcast way back with Devon Parr. I don't even know what number that was. Like 6, 7, 8, something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe the 5th episode. So you can go back and listen to that where she compared the Wiens Vermentino to a Tuscan Vermentino. It was a great comparison. The wines were both excellent. And I think for the most part, everybody in Temecula does a really good Vermentino. It's very consistent. We have here in front of us the Cougar Vermentino. I think it's 2023. I'm not exactly sure on the vintage. From the aroma, what are you getting off the aroma? I think this is kind of tried and true, right, to what we described?
Very much so. It is. I do get the green apple. I get a little bit of lime.
Yeah.
Definitely some lemon. Maybe a hint of some florally notes.
I think of this Vermentino for me is like, it's kind of like Sauvignon Blanc for Temecula without the green bell pepper.
Yeah.
Like if you like Sauvignon Blanc but you don't like that bell pepper, this sort of can fit that like bucket.
I agree with that because it's very citrusy and it actually is very aromatic.
It is very aromatic, yeah. I wouldn't say it's like at the top, but it's like that, what the WSET would call medium plus. The only thing I don't get the kind of like piney notes that we mentioned as far as the aromatic character. Maybe on the palate, though. We were talking earlier. We both like this a little bit more, the nose on this, more than on the palate itself. Those items are all on the palate, and it does have a little bit lifted acidity to it. So just a little bit elevated in your mouth. Kind of a little bit sour, but there is maybe, now that I think about it, maybe a little bit of that like almond, like green almond, and like pine kind of flavor to it.
Yeah, there's a little like bitter note on the palate, and that might be what that is.
We like the aromas on this wine. Palate, we might have to give it a little bit of a pass. So I think I've had better Vermentino, and we didn't mention it, but there are quite a few Vermentinos here that you can go out and find.
Yeah, I just had one at Botaya a couple months ago that I thought was really well made, and then that one from Weens with on the Devon Park episode, that one was really good.
Weens, so I think Ponte, Botaya have one. Weens does. Pamac, which is a newer winery in town, has a Vermentino. I believe that Danza do Sol has a Vermentino. Robert Renzoni, Olivia is doing Vermentino stainless steel and amphora aged. And then I want to say barrel fermented. I'm not sure if that's correct or not, though. They're doing those as kind of their reserve level wines offerings. So people are experimenting rather than just doing a straight stainless steel where you keep all the aroma and that intense kind of fruity flavor.
Yeah, so Vermentino's is another one that's pretty easy to find around here.
Yeah, of the three, I think Vermentino is probably would go to on a list rather than...
Same.
Yeah. So, all right, we're going to take another little break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about three varietals that are going to be less familiar to most people, but have really been growing in their plantings and offerings here in Temecula. All right, we poured some wine, and we are back to talk about three less familiar grapes, but you can find them a little more often here in Temecula. The first one is we have Arneis, Fiano, and Falanghina. Arneis, so this is another Piedmont, northern Italy grape that's very indigenous to that area. It has like this medium body to it. You get a lot of pear, peach, white flower with a sometimes like nutty finish to it. It can be done in a very kind of like lower alcohol, crisp, lean style, but it could also be done in a more kind of like lush, textural style. I've had some really good ones. This also can age a bit. At home right now, I have one that is from a really top-notch producer and is about 10 years old. So I'm saving that for someday to see if that aged and how that aged, because I've never had an aged Arneis before. This is kind of more Chardonnay. So if you're a fan of unoaked Chardonnay, you like the texture that's in the softness and the richness, this is probably something that you could go for, because it's gonna go well with roast chicken, some mushrooms, cheeses, and risotto. Although it's done and made in stainless steel for the most part, there are some people doing some oak fermented or oak aged wines, and also with some lees aging. And lees aging will give it a little bit more of a richer texture on the palate. All right, so fun fact, Arneis was nearly extinct in the 1970s, was revived by producers like Bruno Giacosa. And backing up a bit, that was actually the producer I could not think of off the top of my head that I have a 10-year-old Arneis from.
I also, when I was reading on this grape, because it's not one you typically learn about when you're studying, they called it the white Barolo, and sometimes they would add it to Nebbiolo in Barolo to kind of soften the tannins and bring up the acidity.
They still might, but
might.
Not allowed to talk about it. It's like Fight Club. So anyways, locally, this is a grape that has really taken off in Temecula. Mm-hmm. And people love working with this grape, and they love the results from this grape. And you're seeing some award winners, some good critical scores from this. Off the top of my head, of course, we're here at Cougar. They have one. The Truffle Pig has an Arneis from right here in Temecula Valley. And who else is doing it?
Botaya has one. Ponte has one. And I think Weens has one in a blend.
Okay. And like I said, we may have missed a couple other producers in there. We apologize. And today you're going to hear a couple names come up quite often. Botaya and Ponte, they're essentially the same winery, but with different winemakers. Cougar, right down the road from us, is Robert Renzoni. You're going to see Pamac has a little bit of an Italian focus to them. And then up the road, of course, the Truffle Pig is going to have an Italian focus. And who else I'm forgetting someone else. Europa has some Italian wines as well.
Weens has quite a few.
And Weens does too. Yeah. But those are the main ones, and then there are some other places that have some of those grapes as well. Poggioliano.
Oh,
so
yeah,
of course, is another one that's going to have a lot of Italian wines.
Yeah, Montserrat over in Fallbrook also has quite a substantial Italian wine list.
If you're interested in Arneis, this is one that you will find. Might take popping from a place to place, but you can find it. All right, what we got next?
Fiano, one of my favorites. Grown in southern Italy in Campania. There's a specific little appellation or DOCG called Fiano di Avellino, and that's where some of the best Fiano wines come from. It's very aromatic, often has a textural component, sometimes notes of hazelnut, honey, tropical fruit, flowers, citrus. It actually ages well, and it kind of dives into the waxy, nutty complexity of the wine. I've never had an aged Fiano, but now I want to age one.
Oh, I heard that there was some special event coming up at your house.
There may or may not be a Fiano night.
Right. What if someone who had an aged Fiano showed up with it? Would they be permitted?
That would be amazing, because we're actually making a dessert. I think that would pair with dessert.
I have a 7-year-old Fiano, so
okay.
And
that's pretty aged.
Yes, yeah. We'll see how it held out.
I would pair Fiano with any kind of roasted white meat like turkey or chicken, creamy pasta. My favorite Fiano pairing is caprese salad, the mozzarella, basil, and tomato. And then also, Rick, in your research, you found that it would pair with truffle. And I'm very, very curious to try this pairing, actually.
Yeah, I don't personally love truffle. Now, there are various levels of truffleness, I would say. Mm-hmm. It's not umami. There's a certain flavor that kind of throws me off personally with truffle. The truffle flavor.
The mushroom flavor.
The mushroomy, earthy. Yeah. I'm also not a big fan of mushrooms. So.
Oh, okay. I also am.
But I am. I've had some really good stuff with a light truffle flavor. So I wonder if this is something that could complement that a lighter truffle. Think of a truffle oil. They make those oils with the truffle flavor, and you kind of use it as a topper.
I could see that. Maybe a little pizza with some of that on there.
We're totally sidetracked now.
Yeah, very sidetracked. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. So winemaking for Fiano, usually stainless steel for that freshness, keep the aromatics. Sometimes you will find it oak aged or aged on the lees, depending on how the winemaker wants to make it. So in our fun fact for Fiano, in my studying of Fiano, I found out that the grapes themselves are very sweet, not the wine, the grapes. And actually, this goes along with the fun fact that you found, Rick. So the name might come from Vitis apiana, since bees, or api, were attracted to its sweetness.
Where can we find some Fiano?
Fiano, my favorite is at Botaya. And then I've given them a lot of shout outs today. You can also find Fiano at Montserrat in Fallbrook.
And then the last grape we have is Falanghina. And this is, again, from Campania and also the area that's called Molise. It's an interesting grape. It has this really bright aromatic intensity to it with a lot of citrus and stone fruit. I wouldn't put it as aromatic as Vermentino, but it's close to that camp. A Falanghina from Campania, you're definitely going to get this volcanic minerality because it grows in those type of soils. In Temecula, I don't think you get that. You do get a touch of salinity to it. To go along with that, it has this mid palate that's a little bit more oily and viscous than I would say Vermentino, but it still tastes distinctly Italian with its kind of elevated acidity to it and sort of bitterness on the finish. That is the wine that we have in front of us, and I think this would be a good thing to go with seafood, grilled vegetables, a white pizza maybe or a pizza even, with some artichokes and something like that on there.
Eggplant parmesan.
What's that?
Eggplant parmesan.
Eggplant parmesan?
I think that would go with eggplant parmesan.
And then, winemaking is generally almost always done in stainless steel to preserve all that, like the fresh fruit and the floral components of it. Fun fact, this is an ancient grape thought to have been used in Falernian wine, which would be the most famous wine of ancient Rome.
Oh, that's cool.
Locally, the only Falanghina that I know of is at Cougar Winery. There may be another one that I've seen in the past, but I think they're the only ones, which ties it all the way back to the beginning when we talked about this was one of the first wines that Cougar brought into the United States. Actually, they were the first people to bring this wine or these cuttings over to the United States and then plant them. And it's sort of grown a bit. I think I've seen Falanghina in Texas. I've seen some in Washington State and maybe Oregon.
There's definitely some in Napa and Sonoma because I actually just had a Falanghina from up there.
And I've had a really interesting one in the past from sort of what's the area around Sacramento, that AVA that's up around Sacramento.
Oh, like Mendocino County or inland?
Inland more of Sacramento. I'm totally.
I'm going to blame this on my concussion.
Yeah. Well, that area that's around there, it'll come to me in about a minute. But this is the wine that we have in front of us now. I would say, from my perspective, that the characters that they read off here kind of match this wine.
Yeah. Yeah. And definitely the texture, too.
Yeah. This is a wine that, we do like better than the Vermentino here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think this is a wine I've liked in the past. And something that I tell people to try, especially if they like a little bit more like texture to the wine rather than just kind of thin wateriness.
Yeah, if you really don't like Pinot Grigio or Pinot Gris, you might want to try Falanghina.
If you lean more Pinot Gris than Pinot Grigio, which is a really wine nerdy thing to say, this is a wine that you would probably like if you like Pinot Gris over Pinot Grigio. So we are going to take another break because we need to go back inside to pour another wine. And when we come back, we're going to talk about a series of grapes that do show up in Temecula, but are really under the radar. We are back to talk about some grapes that are really under the radar. You might find one or, a winery with one of these grapes out there, but it's few and far between. The first grape we have is Catarratto, and this is something that Poggio has locally. It's Sicily's most widely planted grape, and that kind of goes along with Poggio has a very, I think, a Sicilian background, and their new place, Alex by Poggio that just opened up on Rancho California, is sort of themed, it has a Sicilian theme to it. But this is really, it's a medium-bodied, lemony, floral, often quite bitter on the finish. It could be simple or it can be really complex. So if it's really a winemaker wants to do more control over it. It's no surprise. This is probably something that's going to go great with sardines and calamari. Anything that sounds Sicilian is probably going to go with this wine. Maybe some light pasta. And then almost always, this is something that you're going to see done in stainless steel, again, to preserve that aromatic intensity and the freshness. So it is also used quite often for another orange wine, a skin contact wine. I personally haven't had one, but I guess if it does have a little bit of color to the skins, this is something that would work well doing that. And this is often blended into Marsala, which is Sicily's fortified dessert wine.
Also used in chicken marsala.
Also used in chicken marsala. Yes, that's right. That's the only reason I can remember it.
That was like one of the first dishes I ever learned how to cook.
And then another grape that Cougar used to have, but I don't know if they have it anymore. I don't even know if they grow it anymore. But it was called Coda de Volpe. And fun fact right off the bat, Coda de Volpe translates into the tail of the fox. It's basically named after the shape of the grape clusters, which kind of look like a fox's tail. I really haven't had anything other than what Cougar's had. I'm not even sure how much I want to go into it. This is from Campania as well. And it's kind of a soft, medium-bodied wine with pear, citrus, and herbs. Again, shocker, it goes good with seafood and vegetables and white pizza and light pasta. Almost always is done in stainless steel.
Our next grape is Cortese, which is grown up in Piedmont. It's famously known to be in Gavi. If you've ever had the wine Gavi, that's the grape, is Cortese. It's usually crisp, a little bit of floral notes with lime, green apple, and sometimes can have an almondy bitterness. It's really good with seafood risotto, any type of antipasti, grilled chicken, even sushi. It's typically made in stainless steel, but some producers are kind of experimenting with barrel aging for kind of a richer style. And if you've ever heard of the wine Gavi di Gavi, Cortese is the grape behind that wine.
Luckily, Palomar is... I don't know if they still have it. It's hard to say Palomar because you haven't updated your website. It just has a landing page with your name on it. So if you had more information on your website, we could talk more about it. Hint, hint.
Hint, hint.
Anyway, so moving on. So the next one we have is Greco di Tufo. And this is something Cougar has. I'm not sure if they have it on the menu right now, but they've had it in the past, as well as Monserrate and Fallbrook has this wine. It is from Campania and usually a little more full-bodied. And I have had a few of these from Campania, and they are much... This is like for Chardonnay lovers who love Chardonnay but don't want the buttery oak, but love that thickness, richness, lushness to it. So lots of citrus, stone fruits like apricot and peach, herbs. And from Campania, it does have this sulfury, minerally, volcanic aroma and taste to it, especially on the palate. This is something that's going to go great with shellfish, lobster, grilled meats, probably chicken. Anything with a creamy cheese sauce is probably going to work really well. Pork is probably something that's going to work great as well. And then again, it's mostly stainless steel, but I have seen some versions done in oak to give it more of that Chardonnay richness to it. A fun fact, Tufo refers to the volcanic tuff soils that give this wine its distinctive minerality. And like I said, Cougar has had it, didn't really get the minerality out of it here. Of course, just not. So I'm curious to try the Monserrate version and see how that does. All right, what we got next?
All right, Pecorino.
You just like to say Pecorino.
I do like to say Pecorino. I also remember the first time I learned that this was the name of a wine and also a cheese. My mind was blown away. It's grown in central Italy, especially around Abruzzo and Marche. It's very crisp, high acid with some citrus, pear, sometimes herbal notes like sage, and definitely has that minerality to it. Pecorino can have really good structure and can age well. It's great with fish, with sheep's milk cheese, which is pecorino, and vegetable pasta. It's usually made in stainless steel. Sometimes they'll do some lees contact for texture. And I love the fun fact for this. So pecorino comes from the name sheep, which is pecora, because shepherds would have their flocks of sheep walk through these vineyards, and sometimes the sheep would eat the grapes off the vines, and the shepherds would give the winemakers some pecorino cheese as payment for their stolen grapes.
Now, you've been to Tuscany, you spent some time in Tuscany, did you have some fresh pecorino cheese and pecorino wine?
I think the main cheese in Cacio e Pepe is pecorino, so yes, I did. Okay. There was a lot of pecorino, but I don't remember having pecorino wine. Yes. I think this would be really good with Cacio e Pepe. Yeah. I've had pecorino here in Temecula at Botaya and also at Ponti. Although at Ponti it has a different name. I think it's called Pastorello or something like that. But it is pecorino.
Yeah, it is pecorino.
I love it. I think it's delicious. What's next?
All right, and then our last grape before we take a short little break again is Verdicchio. And this is mostly from the Marche, sort of like eastern, closer to Slovenia, or not Slovenia, when I try across from Greece. Mediterranean Sea, yeah. Well, it's all the Mediterranean Sea there. But I mean, it's on the eastern side of Italy, faces that way. We think that Botaya had a Verdicchio at one time.
I feel like I've had one from there, and I didn't see it online on their menu, so maybe they sold out of it, but I'm pretty sure, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure they had a Verdicchio.
So we are not entirely sure that you're going to see this in Temecula, but if you do, let us know, because we're interested. It has a lot of high acid, citrus, green apple, almond, a lot of almond, and a little bit of an herbal edge. Now, I haven't had an old one, but they say that it can age quite well, developing honey and nutty notes, which I get. I just haven't had it. It is great with fried fish and white meats and truffle dishes again. Again, mostly stainless steel done. A little bit of oak is used, and sometimes some lees aging to give it some texture on the palate. Verdicchio bottles, fun fact, were once famously shaped like amphora, boosting its popularities in the 1960s and 1970s.
That's fun.
I guess. I mean, it's marketing, so it helped sort of define it in the same way that Chianti Classico bottles or Chianti bottles were in the wicker basket. So it was just something that Americans go, oh, I love that bottle. It looks like a cat.
Cat wine.
Cat wine. All right. We're going to take another quick break here. We'll be right back to talk about a kind of sweet wine. All right, we are back to wrap up our Italian white varietals in Temecula episode. And before we dive into the last one, there is another grape that we thought Cougar had, and that would be Glera. Glera is the main grape that's in Prosecco. So if you go out to the store and you get Prosecco, that is the grape inside that. Used to be called the Prosecco grape, but they wanted to differentiate it, and they decided to name it a lovely name of Glera that just like rolls off the tongue and sounds amazing. So the irony is they don't even call it Glera, they just say it's Prosecco. Mm-hmm. And there's some lovely rosé Proseccos that are out there now. I quite like that. And if you're cost conscious, you can always go to Costco and get their $5.99 or $6.99 Proseccos and mix it in with your orange juice.
There you go.
Mimosa.
Katie and Ryan, when they went to the Prosecco region and they brought back a still wine made of Glera.
I have heard that as a thing.
I haven't tried it yet, but I'm very excited.
So worth mentioning, again, if someone has Glera, we don't think anybody does now. We were very, very sad to hear that Cougar did not, because we thought they might. Let us know. But the last grape we're going to talk about today is Malvasia Bianca. And this is a grape that can be found pretty much all over Italy. It's generally made into a sweet or sweeter wine. Locally, Cougar has a sweet wine, and I just learned that Marshall Stewart does a Malvasia Bianca that's in the drier, maybe not quite dry, but in a drier style than what we have today, and we're going to taste that in a minute. It is very aromatic. Lots of fresh floral notes like apple blossom, peach blossom, apricots, elderflower. It can be made into a sweet or dry style or sparkling style too. I think I've seen some sparkling Malvasia Biancas out there. Do see some out of California.
Yeah.
I have seen it. Because you can have those different styles, it works with a wide range of food pairings. But I think the one that pops the most to me would be a spicy dish. Just that the sweetness, especially in the wine we have, is going to go with that. Again, winemaking, very flexible. You can make it still. You can make it sparkling. Or you can make kind of what they call the pasito style, which is a dessert style. Fun fact, Malvasia is actually a huge family of grapes, many of which go all the way back to Greece. So we have Cougar Malvasia Bianca. And what's your first reaction?
I'm not a fan of sweet wine. I can do dessert wine. I think if it's paired with the right food, I don't mind dessert wine, and I actually really enjoy it. This has so much honeysuckle in the nose. It's very floral. So if you like floral wine, I think you might like this. The sweetness is not overpowering, though.
Yeah, it's not cloying.
I thought
right?
I would really, really dislike it, and I don't.
It's more of it's a little watery with some sweetness to it, and then a lot of like white peach to it, and maybe a little bit of a tropical tone, but mostly like green apple.
You know what this reminds me of?
What's that?
An off-dry Riesling.
Yeah, an off-dry Riesling, but without the kind of like stoniness, leanness that Riesling can have.
Yeah.
Or the petrol. So if those flavors don't appeal to you, if you want something sweeter, this is also something that you can go out and find at Cougar. and at Marshall Stewart. I'm trying to think. We were talking earlier about some grapes that were surprised don't appear in Temecula, and one of them is Trebbiano, which is another grape that you can find pretty much everywhere, I think, in Italy.
It's really popular in Tuscany. If you've had Vinsanto or heard of Vinsanto, the dessert wine, it's usually made with Trebbiano and Malvasia. They also do in Tuscany, if you go wine tasting, they'll give you a starter white wine, and it's usually some sort of blend of Trebbiano and Malvasia in a dry, still version. But I thought everything I had there was really good. I've not seen it here, though.
Yeah. Another grape that I love out of Italy, in northern Italy, is Friulano. Which is delicious, and I'm surprised no one's tried it around here, especially maybe some of the higher elevation sites, like
maybe up in DeLucio or La Cresta.
Around that area. So that would be interesting to see how it would do. The other grape I was thinking about, that's the white grape in Mount Etna, Caricante, is another grape that it's high acid, and I think would maybe be an interesting. It would be interesting to see what that did in like some of the higher elevations here in California. So that wraps up our Italian white varietal episode. Any final thoughts, Shannon, before we sign off?
This was a really fun episode to put together and to talk about because I love Italy and it's still very hot here, so it's definitely white wine season still. No, it was really fun to kind of learn who's doing some unique white wine varietals from Italy that you don't typically see. I think the very first time I ever had Fiano was in Temecula, which is kind of funny.
And we will have an episode upcoming on Italian red varietals. There are many more red varietals in Temecula. I wouldn't say many more, but maybe it's about the same amount of number. I don't know. We'll have to do some research, and I think that'll come out in about a month from now.
So if you know any wineries that have some unique red Italian varietals here in Temecula, let us know.
And we're getting ready to taste one of them that I can never pronounce. It starts with the C and is some version of Sangiovese that's here at Cougar. So kind of excited about that.
Yeah, I've never had it before.
I still can't pronounce it, and I never will. So, anyway, thanks for joining us. Cheers.
Cheers.
Hey, super fans. Thanks again for listening to another full episode of Pour Temecula. When Shannon and I had originally recorded this episode, we discussed doing a wine review on Bottaya's Fiano. To be completely transparent, we both tried the wine together, and we weren't impressed. Maybe it was a bad bottle. Maybe it was our palates. The point is that we didn't find the wine particularly worthwhile of your time. However, we did try a Bottaya Verdicchio that we did thoroughly enjoy and plan to drop that episode later this week. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to Pour Temecula and leave us a review. Follow us on social media for behind-the-scenes content and updates on some upcoming exciting shows. Until next time, keep exploring, keep sipping, and cheers.